this session so that we can share it with our members who weren't able to attend. Hello, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to see everyone here. I'm Tammy, the Executive Director of FAIR Idaho. We're really excited to be hosting this today. We have 5 really amazing panelists that are here to share their expertise. Many of these people are good friends, and I think that they're amazing and so skilled and so knowledgeable in their profession. So I'm really thankful to have you guys here, and I'm excited to have this conversation. We will keep things really tight on time. We have about 15 minutes after the end of everyone's panel to ask questions, but you're more than welcome to pop some of those in the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and we can ask as time permits. This will end at 2:30 for sure on the dot, so you guys will be sure to be on schedule and on time with everything. We've got our last panelist joining us right now. I do ask that if you're not speaking on the panel, you please mute your microphone. And now let me introduce everyone, since it looks like we're all here now. Braden Jensen is the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation, covering the issue areas of natural resources, environment, energy, and crops. He's worked as a registered lobbyist for the Farm Bureau during the past 10 legislative sessions. He was born and raised on a family farm and sheep ranch in northern Utah. Braden now lives in Caldwell, Idaho with his wife and 4 kids. They're probably your friends too, Braden, but they're your kids. Savannah Settle is the founder of Shima, a consulting firm that helps family-owned and multi-generational businesses navigate the emotional and relational dynamics that affect succession, leadership transition, and day-to-day operations. With roots in both family systems and therapy and business strategy, she works with entrepreneurial families to strengthen communication, resolve conflict, create practical solutions, and ensure legacy does not come at a cost of relationships. Laurel Martin is the founder of Growing Wild Consulting, who helps small food and beverage companies get unstuck and move with confidence by strengthening their organization and operations. Through strategic planning, continuous improvement, and leadership development, she helps organizations reduce chaos and improve profitability while growing their capability to tackle increasingly complex challenges together. She lives in Seattle, Washington with her husband and 2 kids and 2 cats. Dr. Mindy Anderson brings statewide perspective on workforce and talent development through her leadership and founder and executive director of the Idaho Veterans Chamber of Commerce. She will share how Idaho's veteran and military spouses community contribute to the state's workforce and agricultural sectors through innovative training pipelines, mentorship programs, and business incubation initiatives. With a focus on collaboration across rural and urban regions, Mindy offers actionable insights on bridging workforce gaps, strengthening partnership, and building sustainable systems that connect talent to opportunity across Idaho's family businesses and agricultural landscape. David Anderson is the Idaho Senior Program Manager for American Farmland Trust, a national nonprofit that partners with farmers, ranchers, and community stakeholders to protect working lands and strengthen agricultural economies. Raised on his family's ranch in the Lemhi Valley, he went to spend 25 years as a hydrogeologist, which, yes, I did practice that word before I said it, hydrogeologist focused on land and water stewardship for energy, mining, and real estate clients before joining AFT in 2021. Based in Boise, David also serves as the board president for the Regenerative Agriculture Network of Idaho and previously as the board supervisor for the Ada Soil and Water Conservation District. And now that I got all that out, I will let Braden take this over. Braden's going to be talking about the new APA legislation, what it means for small operators, upcoming policy considerations affecting land, labor, and markets, and how to engage effectively in the policy process. Welcome, Braden.
Thank you, Tammy. Sure appreciate it. You can hear me okay?
Yep, it's perfect.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Tammy, for the invitation to come and speak to this group. And yes, I'm always excited to talk a little bit about this topic. It's a fun topic. Many of the people on this call have known how much we have been working in this area when it comes to addressing the issue of land conversion, right, and ag land loss. Obviously, we hear it from our elected officials all the time that the state of Idaho has been discovered, and apparently everybody wants a piece of Idaho. And so obviously very excited about that, because that brings a lot of opportunities, but it brings a lot of challenges too, particularly when we're talking about our farmers, our ranchers, our ag industry, our ag businesses, and everything. Obviously, the backbone of the state's economy is agriculture, and it's built around so many other facets of the economy. And economy is built around production, agriculture, and so you have the agribusinesses and all the supporting industries that rely on a viable ag industry. So over the past couple of years, 2 years ago in the Idaho legislature, we were able to pass a new tool for landowners to consider. Of course, we have conservation easements. That's something that Idaho law has allowed for many years. We have TDRs, transfer of developmental rights. We have a whole host of things that landowners can consider. But it's always been a desire, particularly amongst our membership, to have additional tools. And really, this was a process that was brought up from our grassroots membership. We have members in all 44 counties in all corners of the state, some that are experiencing more pressures of growth than others. But this was the majority of our membership really wanted our organization to take a more active role in this space. And so we were able to pass in the Idaho legislature the Agriculture Protection Area Act, which essentially allows for a landowner to sign up through their local government, through their local county, and put a parcel of land into what we call an APA, or an Agriculture Protection Area. It would be a termed agreement for two decades, so 20 years. There is no separation of development rights. There's no selling of the development rights. The development rights stay with the landowner, stay with the land. They're just essentially paused for the duration of that designation, that APA designation. We were excited to see that pass. We did actually have pretty significant support, overwhelming support by the legislature to pass that, and to see that that new addition to the state. There is no monetary benefit, but there are some of the benefits that are received is that landowners are grandfathered in to be able to ensure that future local ordinances would not negatively impact them, that they could also have heightened protection from nuisance claims, but they would also have limited that the use of eminent domain would be limited towards them. There's more benefits that we want to add to this piece of legislation, to this program, and we're continuing to work on that. We made some adjustments to the APA program last year in the legislature to address some of the issues that we were hearing from counties and from some of our local members that were interested in this. I will say that there's certainly probably more that needs to be done. As is with any new program, there's certain things that we learn as we go, and there's adjustments that need to be made. And I guess really what I wanted to share with this group is that conversations are continuing on what we need to do and what other things we need to look at, and not just new ideas, but also better utilizing the existing tools that we have in the toolbox. So we have been working with the governor, and we're excited to announce that we have a governor's summit on December 18th that will address the issue of agriculture viability, and really specifically focusing on this issue of land conversion and how do we better plan for production agriculture in this state. Really, this is a conversation that needs to be had more broadly and more robustly in the public space. I mentioned that this is a conversation that our organization has been having internally. We've had internal working groups with representation from all corners of the state, from multiple generations, because you're depending on which generation you're at or where you're at in your stage of life, your perspective on this may vary. But we need to really have these start to have these conversations more publicly to better, again, utilize the tools that we have in our toolbox, and then also explore other things that we could add to the toolbox as well. And so that's what we're really excited about. First of all, that we could raise this issue to the level of, again, a governor summit, to bring in elected officials, to bring in officials on the state and local level, bring in planners, bring in developers, but of course our ag industry, our landowners. We have to have them in there, and we have to plan. And we're certainly, I don't want the perception to be misconstrued. We're not trying to stop growth. And I've got plenty of members that, you know, they intend to sell certain portions of their farm, not all of it, but some of it, right? And we're not trying to stop growth. We're not trying to take away people's rights or the property rights to be able to do what they want, but we want to ensure that the rights, you know, again, the tools that we do have can be better utilized so that we can actually plan for production agriculture, just like we do for, you know, growth, for schools, for subdivisions, commercial and industrial needs. We need to plan for production agriculture, and I think that's extremely important in this state. So we're excited to work with the governor's office, to work with many who are on this call to plan a meaningful summit. You know, the summit is a one-day thing, but certainly our desire is that this will just kick off this conversation, and it will build momentum for more conversations to happen into the future. Because, you know, I get the question all the time is what are you guys going to do next? You know, what are we going to do for the APA? What other incentives can we build? And you know, I've got a whole list of ideas. David probably smiles all the time because he has seen the list, and he's probably attributed a few additions to that as well. I've got a whole list of ideas, and you know, some land well with some folks, and others certainly don't. It might be a non-starter for others, but we need to have these conversations so that people can know where production agriculture is, but then also, you know, what are the needs of the other stakeholders in this matter. So, Tammy, with that, I think that's what I've got to share at this time. I'm excited to see if there's any questions from folks, and yeah, take any feedback right now.
Thank you so much, Braden. That was an incredibly quick rundown of so much that you work on. The ABA was such incredible legislation to come out of this last couple of years, and I'm so excited that it's there and it's being expanded.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Tammy. And I really do appreciate that. And I've been talking to some of our members, and it sounds like we've got some members here up there in the Valley County that are considering, moving forward with this. And so that's exciting. I hear from some local elected officials that they were saying, oh, well, why did we do this? Nobody, there droves of people aren't coming into this. That was never our expectation. We always knew that, with the list of benefits that we currently offer with the program, it might not be enough for some, but I'm very excited and really pleased to hear that there are people that are considering this. So absolutely excited to move that forward. I do see the question, is the summit open to the public? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And we'll get more details out. It's going to be held here in the Treasure Valley. We're trying to secure the venue. So there's we'll leave a little bit of anticipation for everybody who's here on the call, but December 18th, it will be from 8 to 4:30 or 5. So it's going to be a full day of event, and we're going to pack it full of a lot of good conversations. So I know that there's going to be a question of, is there going to be a virtual option? I'm certain that there are many folks that aren't here in the Treasure Valley. Of course, the participation is always better if you're able to come in person, but we are looking into providing a virtual option as well. We want as much participation as possible. And this is not, even though the event's going to be held in the Treasure Valley, this is not an isolated issue to the Treasure Valley. This is a statewide issue. If my members hear that, if I ever thought or portrayed it as this is only a Treasure Valley issue, I would really be in trouble with a lot of folks. This is a statewide issue. So we want to make sure we get that perspective from everybody.
Thank you so much, Braden. And then can you put the little flyer, you or David, put the little flyer in our chat so people can see it?
Yeah, absolutely. When we move on to the next participant, I'll pull that up. I'll definitely get that into the chat so we can get that out. So, and yes, please help spread the word. The success of these summits is really largely based on those who participate and those who show up. All perspectives are valued on this. And I also want to be clear that, again, we're not trying to vilify any of our stakeholders in this. We need all their input and perspectives to be shared. So please spread the word.
Thank you so much, Braden. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Tammy.
Our next panelist is Laurel Martin. Laurel, thank you so much for being here today. Laurel is going to talk about strengthening your foundation before you grow, step back, or pass it on. The 3 pillars of structure, direction, roles, and process, and how structure creates resilience through change, uncertainty, and transition. Laurel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tammy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here, for taking your time. I am new to this group, so before I plunge in, I'd love to just hear in the chat, what is your organization? What's your role? Just so I have a sense of, what perspectives are represented. I'm going to pop my contact information and website in there as well, in case you hear anything of interest. Apologize today, my voice went out a little bit yesterday, so this is not what I usually sound like, but hopefully it's not too scritchy scratchy to you. As Tammy mentioned, I'm an operations and leadership consultant, so I help companies improve their processes and strengthen their teams so they can execute more effectively. And lately, what I've really been working with clients on is building their adaptability to grow and thrive in this increasingly volatile and uncertain world. And growing is in my business name, Growing Wild. But I did want to talk a little bit about what I mean by that. It's not necessarily about getting bigger, but about being really intentional about whatever is next for you and your organization. And I'm looking in the chat here. It sounds like there are some farmers, some researchers, different support community organizations in there, some food producer type companies. So that's awesome. Great representation. um, so, when we talk about growth and structure, for some, the next step might look like expansion. Most of the clients I work with are interested in increasing the dollar amount going to their income. But for others, it might mean, well, let's just do more of the same, but carve out a little bit more common balance in our lives. Or I just want some more predictability and stability. Or for others, it might mean, passing along or getting ready to pass along your family business or farm to the next generation, or perhaps even sale to a private entity. Whatever your goal, my question is really, is your business built to support it? Because I would argue that any one of these transitions, wherever you're headed next, would benefit from more structure. Structure really helps you create freedom and helps your business withstand shocks and run smoothly, whether you're scaling up, stepping back, or passing it along. So what do I mean by structure? There are three types of structure I want to talk about today. The first being clarity of direction. So does everyone know where your business or organization is headed and why? Who are you serving? What are you trying to achieve? How would you measure success? How are you progressing along that direction right now? The biggest waste of time and energy in any human endeavor is to be working on the wrong thing altogether. So a great source of leverage and efficiency is if founders, owners, or just teams can get together and really be clear on what are we focusing our efforts and resources on so that we're really driving to deliver on the critical few things that matter. The second would be clarity of roles. So who's responsible for what now and as you plan for the next chapter of your organization. It's all too common for me to see a founder or owner who is really the only one who knows how everything fits together. They're calling the shots. They're really, hands-on in every important piece of the business. And especially if you see a future for yourself, 10 years down the road where you're not running your organization day to day, you probably want to start making, some of those decisions more explicit, start involving others in how things work. But even if not, I find in many small businesses, the people are really suffering from that lack of clarity. If you start talking about responsibilities and decisions, they'll start to express real doubts and hesitation around, well, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be doing this or if that's really my place. And they end up holding back from taking initiative. So conversely, I've seen real efficiencies unlock when you can just clarify who's in charge of deciding what and who's in charge of executing what. And speaking of executing, that's kind of the third realm of structure that I want to talk about is process. So how are things supposed to work for any given function, whether it's your core product operations or your administrative support type processes? What are the steps that must be done? In what order? Who does them? How are they done? And not just how do things work when things are going right, but what happens when things go wrong. And what I often see is, especially with organizations with really long tenured employees, that kind of knowledge ends up just in someone's head It's like, oh, well, when that happens, we're just going to go call, Jimmy. But what if, Jimmy leaves or Jimmy gets sick? So we want to, again, work on this idea of resilience and a robust organization such that when a person leaves or is unavailable, that the business still functions the same way, that they know what that person knows. So I guarantee that it will improve your accuracy and speed right now if you just document how are things supposed to work? What's the actual process for this? And certainly that will also pay dividends in the future as you see, employee turnover, if you need to bring in new people, as you're growing, you're going to be bringing more people onto the team. I want to tell you a story now about how lack of structure creates vulnerability and how creating clarity restored stability for one of my clients during a crisis. So last summer, I just started working with a couple who were co-owners of their business, husband and wife, and they ran a brewery, distillery, bar, kitchen, and outdoor entertainment space in the agricultural area of Northern Washington here. And we were supposed to be working on operational excellence. They weren't making a profit and really wanted to work on, how do we reduce waste, bring more customers in, serve them quickly so that we can, get back to profitability. And just as we were working on this project, the wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the husband immediately became her full-time caretaker. So they went overnight from being two people who knew everything about their business, worked on it 24/7, they kept it all running, to being completely absent from the business, and now no one's in charge. They had a manager of each of those four areas, kitchen manager, event coordinator, head brewer, but they really didn't know how to coordinate with one another without the owners, and they had no idea what to do strategically in terms of how are we going to turn this business around. So thank goodness we had a toehold. We had just started this project, and we ended up really doubling down on defining standards and thinking about what do we want the customer experience to look like? How do we make it more seamless across these four entities? And really, kind of upsell, cross-sell across these different areas. What does the back of house run like? How do we make sure that we're coordinating on things like what specials are we running or how many people do we think are going to come in today so that that is, seamless, that it keeps up at a healthy pace without burning out the employees and just, seeing turnover. So they were really able to use this devastating experience as a catalyst for rallying, for stepping up to run a more structured professional business. My last act with them was helping them hire a GM who's kind of playing that coordination role. And they had a great summer and harvest season this past year at their venue. They now have processes and roles that keep that machine running and humming without the ever-present intervention of the owners. So those owners have this stable source of income as they deal with their personal challenges. So the message here is let's proactively build that resilience. You never know when an illness, a market shift, a family transition is going to come your way. But the best time to strengthen your foundation is before you're forced to. Not to mention you're going to benefit from structure immediately. So the work will flow better, you'll experience less chaos, better teamwork, and a smoother and more enjoyable day for your team, which, we might as well enjoy our life at work. So structure is really how you protect your livelihood, your people, and your peace of mind. So whether you want to grow or you're just looking to, have a more stable day, you're planning to pass along your organization, that clarity really starts now. If anything that I just talked about sparks your interest, definitely shoot me a note, shoot me an email, say hello. I've got lots of content on my website around this stuff and via a newsletter, and would just love to get to know you and understand what your challenges are around process and people management. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Laurel. I do have a quick question for you. I passed around this agenda prior to everyone coming in, and I had an immediate response from a board member who wants to know if they have just taken over a new business, do you suggest direction roles or standard operating procedures to be the first thing that they tackle?
Ooh, what to tackle first? I would say it depends a bit on what the situation is. I would start, any kind of engagement with that current state assessment to figure out what are the gaps. Because it might be that actually everything is fine operationally for now, in which case I would suggest starting with direction, like let's look at the strategy and vision. But if the whole thing is a train wreck, you might need to shore up your processes and roles before you can really carve out the headspace and the time for working on that longer term planning.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you
yeah,
so
it kind of
much.
depends on the current situation.
Yeah, that makes sense that it would be individualized. Thank you so much, Laurel. I appreciate your expertise on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up is Mindy Anderson. Dr. Mindy Anderson is going to talk to us about leveraging veteran and agricultural workforce programs, bridging skills gaps through creative training and mentorship, and building lasting workforce partners in rural Idaho. Mindy, welcome.
Thank you, Tammy. So just before I start off, I just want to make a mention that I hail from Cascade, Idaho, not born and raised here, but this is where I have landed after retirement from the military. And so I'm starting to see a lot more clearer the rural gaps that we see in workforce. And a lot of that is coming to me, not only with the Veterans Chamber of Commerce, but also I serve as the board president for the Cascade Chamber of Commerce, which really needs to work on trying to increase their value and supporting the businesses through growth in tourism and population. So um, I will just start off by talking about our mission real quick. We are a 501c3, and we're a little bit unique in being a chamber of commerce where we provide navigation services at no cost, and those navigation services support connecting the Idaho community and the military community together and bridging the gaps in between for opportunities in entrepreneurship, workforce, housing, education, family, and wellness, which then creates a wraparound network service that allows for us to have this wraparound network. So we spend the majority of our time working with Idaho community partners because we can attract veterans all day long and their family members, but if we don't know where to serve them and send them and provide them navigation services too, and we don't know where the resources are at, then we're not going to get very far, right? And so with the navigation services, it's really beneficial in helping them break down those barriers and those silos and getting to where they really want to go and what they're passionate about when they've transitioned or they're getting ready to transition. And so just to speak to the Workforce Development Council grant that we have, we were awarded a first innovation training grant, and that allowed for us to establish first and foremost a veteran and family employer network for the state of Idaho. And that allows for employers to register with us and be registered. And then when career seekers and transitioning service members are looking for opportunities, they can certainly find your company on our website, and they could reach out to you and see if there's opportunities to work with you. And they go everywhere. Sometimes they tell me cities and I have to look them up on a map because I'm not really sure where those tiny communities are. And then the Workforce Development Council Innovation Training Fund grant kind of turned into okay, this is great because we're really bridging that gap in the workforce space. And now we're on the industry sector grant, which is now we really need to start focusing on the industries and the gaps in the industry specifically. So we are focusing on tax, trades, healthcare, and agriculture. And mostly because those are where we see the gaps, and those are where the gaps are biggest for us too as well, where we don't have a really great network that's built yet. And so we're working on trying to build that. So through that, with our Workforce Development Council grant, we also have become a very important part of the SkillBridge internship program, which is provided by Department of Defense. And that allows for military members that are in transition from the military 6 months prior to their separation date to go and work with a company or get some internship experience or see if that's something they may want to do in their career pathway once they're getting ready to get out. And the goal is for them to, of course, transition to a position, but sometimes it's just mentorship, right? They just need to transition and it gives them a little bit of extra time. So that 6 months prior means that they don't go from uh, Sergeant Anderson today to Mrs. Anderson tomorrow. They go from Sergeant Anderson today to Mrs. Anderson in 6 months while they're in the community and they're working in the sector in which they want to be in, which is fantastic. It doesn't cost the companies any funds to pay for them. The military moves them completely. The military also pays them all of their base pay, their housing, their food stipends, all that good stuff. They still can access education benefits for their tuition assistance, which comes at no cost of them, and it's free, provided by active duty until they separate out. And they can use that for apprenticeship programs. They can use that for getting certifications. They can use that to go to schools that agricultural programs may have, or businesses may have that they want to send them to learn about seeding and watering and all the different things that come with farming. So they have benefits too as well, which is really great for them to come out. So it allows for them to explore. We typically see, I would say, roughly around 90% of the people that we work with that are transitioning out do not go into what they were doing in the military. They are looking for something completely new. They have been told for how many ever years that this is what they're going to do, this is what they're going to wear, and now they have this opportunity to do things that they want to do and look at things. And you'd be surprised at, and I was surprised at, how many were saying, I think I want to be a farmer or a rancher. And a lot of that comes with, since we've been in this war on terrorism, and they say it's over, it doesn't really feel like it is, because we still have people separating from the military that come with some of the war with them, and they have some of those post-traumatic stress concerns, and they have different things. And so some, we've been finding, they just want to go and live in the middle of nowhere and be a farmer and work with their hands and move their family there and just be at peace out there in the country. And so it's the biggest gap that we have when we're transitioning a service member, because there is no farming, there is no ranching in the military. We fly planes, we shoot guns, we do a lot of different things, but farming and ranching is not anything that we do at all. And so we have really great programs that are also across the state. I know Connie May is on here from the University of Idaho, and she provides opportunities for our veteran farmers to go get some education and some certifications. They have a Harvest to Heroes program. She's with the Farmers Veteran Coalition for this country with the state of Idaho, and she's got a lot of resources at her fingertips. And then we've really partnered up with Tammy with Fair Idaho to just be able to connect more with our veteran farmers and ranchers. So SkillBridge is a great opportunity for somebody to come and learn more about the agricultural space and see if it's something that they want to explore. It also helps with this little bit of a problem that there is in succession planning for our farmers and ranchers, where they may not have people to take over their business or their farm or ranch, and they don't want to see it get scooped up by land developers. And so they're hoping that they can bring somebody in to be able to continue on their farm or their ranch long after they've left that. And so it's an opportunity, and they're so eager to learn. They jump right in. Military is adaptable. We're flexible. We're not afraid to do anything. It's just the way we're built and the way we're raised in the military. And so it's also another great opportunity. We've been having some conversations around that. The other part that we have worked on with workforce, and super exciting to share today, because we are working on our final getting the information out on the streets, but we started a tiny homes project with the West Data School District CTE program. So the high school students at West Data CTE are building tiny homes for us right now as we speak. And they are building 2 of them. They started not last school year, but the year before. It was their first time. So they've been kind of working through the challenges of learning how to build tiny homes, but they're doing really great. And we're going to receive those tiny homes back. We provide the supplies, they build them, and then they give them back to us. Well, our board had looked at where would these land? How are we going to find who would be able to receive these? We know they have to go to veterans, and we want them to go to veterans, but would it be a veteran for workforce housing, or would it be a veteran that needs workforce housing for their business? And so we decided that farmers and ranchers, veteran owned, would be the receiving people to receive the tiny home. So we're going to be putting out the application and allowing for farmers and ranchers that are veteran owned to apply to receive one of the tiny homes that are being built. With that, that allows for them to possibly put it on their land and then put some hookups there. And we have lots of veterans that do want to work outside in the outdoors and don't necessarily want to be bothered, just as I mentioned earlier. And so some of these opportunities are really great for them too as well if they wanted to, but not necessary to have a veteran in that tiny home on the farmer ranch, but maybe somebody that they can groom or grow into taking over in succession planning, or just have workforce affordable housing solutions. We are working with Director Keeley from the Department of Commerce to get block grants to help with the funding for the farmers and ranchers. So that will help with hooking up electrical and the plumbing and the sewer, whatever that may be, so that it's absolutely of no cost whatsoever to a farmer or rancher to receive one of these tiny homes. So be looking out for that. And if you want more information on that, please let us know. Jordan's on the call with us. He is our housing project management intern. He is actually a SkillBridge member working with us, and he's with us until December. And then we have Scott Brown. He's our navigation services director. He also works with our housing initiatives, and then also with the Tiny Homes Project. And so we're hoping to get the tiny homes landed somewhere in the springtime. Before then, we can get the hookups and everything all paid for and get those block grants once the federal government decides what they're going to do with the federal government going forward. And it's just been a really great partnership. And it's actually been one that now other communities are asking, how did you do that? And it really was not hard at all. People want to donate to help with workforce, housing, and education. So it hits three blocks. You've got the high school students that are going into trades, and we bring out contractors and they do some mentorship with them. And we have veteran-owned businesses that do plumbing and HVAC, and they come out and they help them with these tiny homes, and then they end up connecting with them for job opportunities. And so it's been really, really great to see the connection and how we've been able to really maximize the opportunities from one really great idea, which was we want to build tiny homes. And then we want to give them to veterans. How do we do that? And what does that look like? So it's been an adventure, and it's been great. And we have a second school that's now coming on board this year. CASA out in Wilder has said, okay, we're ready to build tiny homes. So I think before we know it, we're going to see a lot more high schools that are building these tiny homes. And what a great opportunity to use the resources that are already out there in our state to be able to put it to good use and really I mean, it's not a high-rise apartment building or anything like that, but it is something. And I think it's at least something that we're working towards to try to figure out how to help support them with these housing initiatives and the workforce concerns that they have too as well.
I love it all. That's so incredible. Your work has been awe-inspiring to watch on this side of it, Mindy, truly. And I hope that people that are listening are hearing that there's this like snake through effect. As we were building out this roundtable, I was hoping that people would take away from this that there are so many supports that maybe you don't get those supports like all in one location. But if you're looking to sell your land, you don't have a family that you could donate, your entire farm to, or that you want to succeed your entire farm to, you can put your land in an APA. You can go to Mindy and make sure that you find somebody who's willing to work the land, wants to take over the land. You don't even have to worry about that. You can go to Laurel to have them be hooked up with the systems and the processes and the people and all the things. And I'm sure that as we continue, you'll hear from David and Savannah other ways that we can shore up this process so that all of our farmers and ranchers have processes that they can easily deploy when they're ready to succeed, or when they're ready to expand, or when they're ready to change their business in whatever way that is. We have all these resources in the community, and I think it is kind of ambiguous. Like from what I hear with businesses is they're like, where do I even start? What do I even do? I was actually just having this conversation with Debbie, and Debbie Davis was saying like, I have all these ideas, but where do I ever start? Like who starts this process? But you can always go to groups like the Farm Bureau, to American Farmland Trust, to Fair Idaho, to Idaho Veterans Chamber, and we can always connect you with the pieces of this, and you can just start to deploy them. So I'm going to stop talking. Thank you, Mindy. I appreciate you so
Yeah,
very
and I'll just say one last thing. Like if you build the opportunity, the military will come. They really will. It's just a matter of having that opportunity available for them to take advantage of.
I love that. Thank you, Mindy. Next up, we have David Anderson from American Farmland Trust. He's going to be talking to us about tools to support farmland preservation and transition, balancing economic return with long-term conservation goals, and navigating tax implications tied to ownership and legacy. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks for having me, Tammy, and hello to many of my friends and partners that are joining here. And my apologies, you'll probably hear a few things that I've repeated over the years, but always try and keep it fresh. So, what I wanted to start with is really the topic of agricultural viability, and why is that important? Well, when we're talking about land protection and keeping our working lands working, then if that agricultural operation cannot remain economically viable, then the land becomes the only asset that that landowner has to work with, right? And now it is at risk. And agricultural viability these days is really quite challenging. There's a lot of pressures that our growers are experiencing. Operational pressures when it comes to inflation on input costs, labor shortages. We've got climate shift and drought and succession, which has already been touched on a little bit. And who's going to take over the family farm or the family ranch? And so, AFT came to Idaho here about 4 years ago as a national organization and bring about 40 years of membership knowledge to Idaho in order to share that with folks. And my goal as our program manager is really simple, and that is, be what's needed. Every farm and every ranch is uniquely its own. And so, you're hearing from a number of us as partners here today is that, we are meeting those growers at the farm gate or at the cattle guard and with the toolbox and saying, okay, what are your challenges and how can we help? These are the tools that we have available to us. And then when we hear that there's a need that we don't have a tool, then there's an opportunity for us to put our heads together and create new tools. As Braden told you about the APA, that is one of our newest tools in the Ag Viability Toolbox. Some other things that we're working on here in Idaho is in that keeping working lands working space, building greater capacity for agricultural easements. And so an easement is really just the legal tool. What the action that's actually occurring there is a landowner is choosing to extinguish their development right, which is one of their private property rights, and that right has a value. So the transactional nature sounds easy, but the fact of the matter is that bringing the monies together to be able to afford those development rights is one of the things that's very challenging for us. We have limited sources here in Idaho currently. Most of them tend to be federal grant based. I'm sure everybody on this call right now is very aware of the upset condition that we're experiencing with our federal agencies. So I think going forward, those monies and those resources are going to be less and less available. And so one of the things that we're working on is working with a coalition of stakeholders on identifying other resources, and in particular, approaching agribusiness as an opportunity to pay it forward. I mean, if you think about it, what's an agribusiness corporation ultimately is protecting shareholder value. And yet, if they're losing the land and water assets that are growing those crops that are ultimately going into those agribusiness supply systems, then their shareholder value in the future is at risk. And so having those candid conversations with agribusiness about their ability to support and protect the land base that supplies them. Another opportunity that we're working on in the working land space is really understanding the threats. AFT brought our Farms Under Threat 2040 study to Idaho and looked at a 15-year data set that ended in 2016. That data set said that we are currently converting 10 square miles of working lands in Idaho per year. And that sounds like a lot. And I will tell you, as somebody who drives from corner to corner of the state on a regular basis, it is much greater than that. So much greater that we're getting ready to do an update for the Idaho Farms Under Threat data and hope to debut that at the Governor's Summit coming up in December. I will just say I'm willing to wager anybody, but I think we're probably closer to double at that. And the reason that is so much higher is that what we've seen in the post-pandemic years is Idaho really does have a bad case of rural sprawl. A lot of our smaller ranchers out there are feeling a lot of those same operational pressures, and selling land is sometimes the only option if it means getting the kids off to college or retiring. And so, you complement that with the extension of broadband service and virtual working, and before you know it, you have 2,000-acre ranches being split up into 40-acre ranchettes that are really truly no longer really producing production skill food and supporting the ag economies. They're just kind of hobby operations at that point in time. Braden mentioned the APA. We're working with Farm Bureau on identifying an option for adding a financial incentive to the APA. I think that is really key. And it's a reflection of the bigger picture that our working landowners are not fairly compensated for the full direct and indirect value that they are bringing to our economies. They are not compensated for protecting open space. They are not compensated for being the collectors of our water supply. They're not compensated for the protection of our ecosystems and the wildlife habitat that they border. So really, I think that one of the things that I'm looking for is really upping our game in the greater conservation finance space so that we can provide other dependable revenue streams to our growers and to help protect their ag viability. I mentioned climate change. One of the things that we're working on is our partnership with the Regenerative Ag Network of Idaho and our Farmer Learning Network at the network. What that is it's a peer-to-peer network for growers who are implementing restorative practices to share their outcomes and the benefits of doing that. AFT has done a couple of soil health economic case studies that show that when we do restore soil health and we do restore water quality, then what we do see is we grow more bushels of crops and we grow bigger cows. And so we're getting the word out that around folks about how they can start incorporating more restorative practices into their operations. And then finally, I will touch on a little deeper on succession. I had the opportunity at Farm Bureau's annual banquet dinner last year to sit with a couple that had just taken over the family potato farm out in Aberdeen. And so I asked the question, I said, well, I'm curious, what kind of succession resources did you, bring into the process? And she just looked at me and she was just like, what? Like those succession resources, those are for that's for the rich. Those are for the big super landowners, which was really telling, right? Because it was one of those things that I think that in my mind is that, I think all of our producers should have access to succession resources. And so the way that looks for us here at AFT, one of the things that we're working on is that most of our growers have that one trusted advisor that they go to. Maybe it is their tax consultant, maybe it's their estate planner, could be the family attorney that's been supporting them for generations. And those trusted advisors may have some background in succession and succession work planning, but may not necessarily be their expertise. And so what I'm finding here in Idaho is that our succession planning resources tend to be somewhat siloed and disconnected. So once again, we're networking these folks together to get them talking together so that if I am a grower and I do go into my trusted advisor and I'm like, it looks like my daughter is wanting to come back and take over the ranch, and yet I just can't give it to her. I've got to figure out how I'm going to pay for my retirement. I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for my health care post-retirement. And that trusted advisor is not that. What we want that trusted advisor is to actually be able to know who to call and make that connection so that we are building a greater network of succession resources across the state, and high tides lift all boats. So it's another area that we are focusing on in that space. And I will just close and just say that I am the governor's ag summit that's coming up here in December is a reflection of everyone's on this call and all of our other partners' hard work over the last 5 to 10 years that has taken the ag valuability conversation from the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a neighbor to larger and larger groups, to the point where we have now elevated it to the governor's office. That is a really big deal. Idaho's been running a little bit behind, and we had the luxury of being a flyover state for a little while, but we have been discovered. The future is here now, and so it's time to get caught up. And seeing the fact that we're going to be able to address a large community at the Ag Summit really, really excites me.
I'm excited about it too, David. I hope that everyone that's here and can attend will attend. It'll be a really great conversation. I do have a question, and this is my question. Nobody else hit me up with this, and I'm sure you'll know the minute I ask it that it was my question. But as you update your farms under threat, something that I feel that the community is needed, that the planning community, the local elected community, the farm and development community, like everyone that works within Idaho really could use a comprehensive map that shows where all of the different approved applications are on a map, because a lot of the applications that have come through the land use process over the last 10 years, when Idaho did start to begin to really expand, haven't even begun, but they're already entitled. So those lands they may be farms, they may be working on right now because they've leased the land or because the owners retained it for whatever reason, but that's already allocated to become a subdivision or a commercial, whatever it is. And most of us can't see that. Like, we don't know that as we drive past these farms. Is that going to be a component to your farms under threat?
What you're referring to there too, Tammy, is that, our current county planning systems that have been, that are driven by our local land use planning act, really reflect where we've been. And we're in what I informally call the sophistication gap. And what I mean by that is that the path of growth of our communities, as it moves out into more rural areas and more rural counties, those rural county planning systems are not prepared for that explosive growth. And so what happens is because they're limited in resources and they're limited in their sophistication for that to address that hyper urbanization, then what we get is we get a rubber stamping, and we get a rubber stamping of low density residential subdivisions out in the middle of some of our most productive land. And so, what you're referring to, Tammy, are those kinds of projects that have been entitled, they're sitting there on paper, and they're just waiting for the path of growth to get there. How do we close that sophistication gap? One of the things that AFT and our partners are all collectively working on is educating our county planner folks and experts on how to proactively plan for resilient food systems. We think about it. What do our planners do? They go to school to learn urban planning. They don't go to school to learn how to plan for agriculture. And a firm believer that the fact that we can continue to have robust agricultural economies and still have plenty of room for houses. We can do this. The fact of the matter is that we've just got to get smarter and build better cities and make sure that we are maximizing all of the infill that we can before we're then looking to that leading edge and saying, well, okay, it's time. You know what? We are going to have to use up some of our farm ground or our ranch ground for next growth. I'm going to feel a lot better about that when I know that I can drive to downtown Boise and I see density in downtown Boise where it belongs.
I love that. Thank you, David. I appreciate you. And I'm sure that many of us on the conversation could have that conversation forever, but I am thankful that you touched on it. Our next speaker is Savannah. Savannah Suttle is the founder and principal strategist of Schema. And I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, Savannah, so please feel free to correct that. She's going to be discussing managing communication and conflict in multi-generational businesses, recognizing and addressing emotional undercurrents in transition, and building resilience and clarity during periods of change. Thank you so much, Savannah.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So like Laurel, I'm new to all of you and I'm really excited to see you here. So a little bit of background about me. So I actually started off as a marriage and family therapist, which primarily works with family systems. So family systems psychotherapy is not just the demographic of marriages and spouses and kids and in-laws. It's a really structural form of psychotherapy where if you think about like soccer, right, or football, and you're analyzing the players on the field, if you change the structure of how the players play together and how that play goes, then you change the dynamic of how that play unfolds. And so marriage and family therapy really lends itself into that direction. I myself happen to be a third generation family business person. We have a family business as well as a family farm. And I am a serial entrepreneur myself, and I love business. And so part of my journey was in realizing that there's this huge gap that therapy wasn't really meeting for family businesses. That there were things that when people would come into my office as a therapist, there were things that weren't toxicity or communication issues from skill set. It was like, this isn't a clinical issue. This is a process issue, or this is a structural issue, right? And so so back about 9 years ago, I started Schema, which is a separate coaching and consulting framework. It's not therapy, designed to help families in business together navigate those structural elements of change and transition. So let's see. One of the things that I really specialize in right now is in succession planning and in multi-generational dynamics. And I've had the lovely privilege of working with Laurel on some of these things. One of the reasons when people come to me is, as I'm sure everybody here is familiar with, I mean, we've all at some point probably worked with family, or if we haven't yet, then we've had to think about why we haven't or why we're choosing not to, or all of the reasons where, maybe we'd want to in the future, and what would that look like, and all of the questions around that. A lot of times when there's a lot of change and people are having a difficult time figuring out for themselves what the future holds, it becomes extra difficult to talk about that with other people in your family. And the conversations can get stalled or stagnant or stuck because you just really don't know where you are, and then you don't know where they are, and you're not really sure how to have that conversation, particularly if the relationships in your family are not conducive to repair. So if you find that you start talking about things and things start to go round and round and round, right, and there's never any kind of resolution, and maybe that just feels like you're spinning your wheels, or even worse, it feels like all of a sudden the conversations start becoming counterproductive, right? The people have a tendency to just stop and avoid, and then they internalize and they pull apart. And so those important discussions are not had. And how that can exacerbate kind of conflict or degradation of the family system down the road is that then all of a sudden, you do run into those crises. Eventually, everybody's always got one, or you've got that rogue family member and who's going to come in and throw a wrench into things, or you've got a career change or whatever. And now all of a sudden it's time to start having those discussions, but you don't necessarily have the skills as a family to address it. Right. And so there are several points I'm going to kind of lay out as we're talking about, as Laurel did a great job of talking about structure. I'm going to kind of lay out a general pathway so you kind of know what's normal, right, with families that are working together, and maybe not feel like, if this is you, maybe not feeling so crazy about it, right? People start asking, okay, we've got this new legislation coming in. I'm trying to do end of life planning. I'm trying to look at my own retirement. I'm looking at my finances. And these are all the things that I call the nuts and bolts, right? They're trying to figure out what exactly is the landscape so that I can figure out what decisions that I need to make. Right. And that's not just true for the person who necessarily owns the farm. It's true for the people it's true for kids who are trying to figure out, what do I need to think about with my parents? Do I need to come and take things over? Do they even have a plan? They haven't communicated a plan to me. With what army or what money am I going to care for my folks as well as my own kids, maybe? And how does this intersect my career path? And a lot of those can be really loaded topics, right? Where you've got a lot of identity, a lot of security questions, and it brings up things like trust. Who can I trust? And what is my area of responsibility? What do I want to take on? What have I felt like I've had to take on in the past, and I'm really tired of doing that? Do I have bandwidth? All of these internal questions start to come up. As you start looking through the nuts and bolts, then there's that question again of, okay, how do I want to navigate that as an individual? And then how do we navigate that as a family system? Some people, you might have a family of 5 and 4 people are all on board about what the plan is, but one person is estranged and they feel like this isn't going to rock and roll, right? And they're going to contest it, or they're going to try to figure something else out, right? And that's when you start looking at alignment issues, right? What is the common vision? Is there a common vision? And if there's not, why? So how I like to advise families, if you get to a place where you feel like you can't have these discussions together on your own, or they get unproductive, or they're turned into conflict, think about engaging a facilitator, number one. Now, sometimes it can be that trusted advisor that was referred to earlier. It could be, that estate planner or the long-term business attorney, or sometimes even the family friend or somebody else's grandma. Sometimes that works too, right? Saying like, hey, look, we're going to all be intentional. And the goal here is, again, really important to put forward that vision of the goal here is we're going to try to find a solution that works for everybody. And making sure that everybody's on the same page about that intention. Now, understanding that going from here where you're really out of alignment to getting here where everybody is in alignment and you've got a clear plan, there's going to be a lot of unpacking sometimes that has to happen. People need to map, okay, look, I've got this kid graduating from high school at this time, and this one's doing this, but they're, blah, 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 blah. And this person's saying, well, I'm graduating college at this time, and then I was planning on, I don't know, joining the Peace Corps. You're going to have different timelines, okay? And everybody needs to get clear as individuals on what their own individual timelines and needs are, right? Then from there, saying, okay, how does that fit into a potential vision? What are the potential visions that you might have together? What are the ones that work? What are the ones that don't work? And being able to approach those without accusation. That's when it comes back to the values alignment, right? Of, man, I really want to be able to be supportive, and yet I don't have bandwidth at this time, or I'm trying to balance this other stuff. So how do we start restoring compassion as opposed to accusation, right? This can also be where it's really helpful to have your own therapist or coach or something involved in the process if you start finding yourself getting really triggered as you start talking through these things. So, and everybody will at some point as well. So like everybody does at some point that you just like, oh my gosh, like this is just the same old narrative, right? Because usually people fall into patterns and structures. There's a meta structure to your relationship and to your dynamics about how they've operated over time. And when you get to a new season, you actually have to change the entire dynamic. You have to change the structure. Just like if you all of a sudden appoint somebody, one of your kids, as the main owner operator over your business, right? And you're trying to take a step back, that's probably going to change some sibling dynamics for that kid, right? And so now all of a sudden you have to start figuring out how you're going to operate differently as a family. The more that you can be intentional and proactive about that on the front end, even as simply as just reiterating and reminding everybody, hey, we are all human here and we love each other. And the entire point is for us to just figure this out together. And it's not going to be clear cut. We're going to have questions and we're going to have to try to navigate it as best we can, right? Reiterating and reminding everybody about the intention, especially when things get heated, is going to be really important. To have grace, restore as much grace as possible, right? And commit that you're going to figure out a solution. And if you haven't found a solution yet, it just means you have to keep being creative, right? And don't be afraid to pull in help. So everybody getting clear on what their own visions are, everybody working together to figure out what a group vision is, right? Pulling in help if you need it to figure out, again, what are those nuts and bolts? What are the scenarios we're not considering? What do we as individuals need if we're going to continue to work together or not? And if we can't work together, or if we don't have interest, what does the sale process look like? And how do we want to individually contribute or not in that? You will find, even in the most perfect scenarios, you've got one kid who wants to take over the business and they may be phenomenal at operations, and they also are not going to be gifted and skilled at all the administrative stuff. And you might find that your other kid is really good at that. And now all of a sudden you have to allow them to work together, but maybe they don't work together well. That is going to be a sub project of them building a relationship to figure out what that looks like. And sometimes if you're a parent trying to figure out the succession plan, because usually as parents, not always, but usually parents are starting to think about, okay, what comes next, right? If you're the one saying like, okay, we're going to have to start making our kids work together more effectively, they also have to do the work. The relationship part of this process is as much a part of the work as is creating the SOPs and the structure and all of the rhythms of business, because the relationship part is a rhythm of business. In fact, as a family, if you cannot talk about distributions or legal stuff or any of the regular business things at Thanksgiving, then it's time for you to create a governance calendar, right? You need to have rituals and rhythms where you can talk about roles and responsibilities. And you can talk about timelines, and you can say, okay, we're going to have a quarterly check-in of here's the state of the business, here's the state of where we are personally, who has decision-making power, who is executing, and what are the things, what are the kind of the snags or the birds under our saddle that we need to start really trying to figure out. The more that people can show that the burr under the saddle is an issue, as opposed to you're the issue, or I feel like you are always making me the problem, the more that you can identify it as a project to work on together and a problem to solve together, the easier it is to navigate these really, really hard conversations, right? And they are hard, and not even because people are bad. Sometimes they're just hard because we don't know, and we're all, you know, nebulous and trying to figure stuff out. So as you continue with these discussions, have grace with yourself, have grace with each other. And if you find it's really difficult, then just know that you're not alone, and it's very normal. So, yeah.
Thank you, Savannah. That's so great. It's so interesting to listen to this. I know there are a couple on this phone call that have dealt with that process, and I know that they were feeling a lot of the things that you were saying. So thank you for that. And I hope that you put your information in our little chat here so that people can reach out to you as they decide if they need that. Thank you for that, for putting that in there. Now's my favorite part of these roundtables. They usually, they vary. Like some of them are really robust and some of them are like, no, we don't have any questions. But now's the opportunity for all of our panelists to be able to have crosstalk, as well as anybody that's in the audience to just ask questions as they pop up, whether it's of one of the panelists or all the panelists as a general just discussion item. We have about 20 minutes or so left of this call if anybody has any questions. I do have some I could throw out there, but I'd like to see what the audience has before I jump in. So at this time, please feel free to unmute yourself and let's have a conversation. And if not, believe me, I can ask questions. Perfect. I'm going to ask one, and we can just leave it at that if there's no other questions. But one of the things that came up in my mind as we were listening to the snake through of all the like ways that the tendrils that you guys all could interact, it made me question, like, as somebody maybe looking at farmland, because we have had such an influx of people moving here. Say they were to find that perfect parcel, they're like, oh, there's my little, magical 40 acres or whatever that I'm gonna be a producer now. I'm gonna get our stuff into markets. Where do you feel, each of you on the panel, where do you feel is the best place for them to start? Do you feel as though like the most important thing is for them to take care of the land and to put that in an easement? Do you feel as though it's most important for them to work out processes? Do you feel like, where do you guys feel if somebody were coming new to the state of Idaho, wanted to become a farmer or rancher, where do you feel that they should start? And any of you can take it, like, feel free, jump on in. Because if not, I'm going to say they need to be a member of FAIR and I'll just help them and connect them to everything.
I'm going to jump in and say, find that mentor, right? Find that neighbor that is a multi-generational grower that really understands that area, that they understand the soils, they understand the water. There's years and years of experience of what crops grow well, maybe some that don't. Definitely find that mentor. And then the other part that I always say is that, the sooner a grower can start showing income, however small, the better. A lot of the resources that are available, either state or federal resources are available, do have some minimum qualification requirements. For example, the Farm Services Agency requires that you need to show, 3 years of a minimum of $1,000 of income. Which really these days is not quite a lot. That's a pretty low threshold. Consistency over 3 years may be more the challenge. And so, but once you're in the FSA system and qualified, then that opens up a lot of opportunities for match funding through the Natural Resource Conservation Service to adopt conservation practices, things that will help improve the soil quality, help improve water conservation, help with animal husbandry, any number of things. And so I think those are always really great resources. And then the other is that, when we talk about 40 acres, we're talking about small producers. Our county conservation districts are really great resources to connect with as far as their own programming to support small producers in learning of that nature.
Awesome, thanks. Does anyone else have anything to jump in? Perfect. Like if we don't have any more questions too, I mean, I can ask a couple more, but they're probably going to be quickly answered. We can just give everybody back their 20 minutes, which I always love when we get time back in the day. Just a really quick question. If Savannah or Laurel, if somebody were to be starting a business, say it's a brick and mortar, it's a restaurant, whatever, do you feel like there's a set like step process that they should do, like this is where they go and this is who they contact and this is what they walk through as they build out a successful business plan?
So I'm going to start off by saying, if you haven't used ChatGPT yet, start there. I think both of us, Laurel and I, are both in the state of Washington. So I'm not quite sure what is appropriate in Idaho. There are numerous resources, but I actually have for my entrepreneurs who want to start new ventures, I actually have checklists that I create for them. And work them through that process of like, hey, I want to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row, and you want to, here's all your filing stuff. And then keep your in case of bus binder, which is in case you get hit by a bus, somebody else can come into your office and pick it up and be like, all right, cool, I know exactly when your annual filings are and all that kind of stuff. This is also important if you have anybody in your life who would care for you in the event of a crisis or an emergency. Like Laura was talking about, that they could come in and pick it up and know how to rock and roll. Other than that, in terms of official stuff from other folks, it's been a while since I've navigated that. So Laurel.
Yeah, again, my reference is Washington, but I assume there's equivalent in Idaho, or honestly, it's probably not that different. If you go on to the Small Business Resource Development Center, Economic Development Council, your local Chamber of Commerce, they've probably got a checklist just to make sure that you're doing all the appropriate filings and permittings and letting everyone know, hey, I'm starting a business. And there's a lot of stuff out there that you can get for free. If you do want more of a guided approach, I subcontract for an organization called Launch Industries that I'll put the information in the chat, where the nice thing about us is that we're kind of this coalition of consultants where we cover all the bases from legal to HR to process and people to media and marketing, and it's kind of a one-stop shop. And you can kind of save on a bundle of hours where you're just getting exactly what you need from the right support people, depending on what your previous experiences or comfort in each of those areas, so that you don't have to go hire 10 different people to fill all the gaps for you. So I'll put that information in there as well. I think the first question, though, and it's probably the answer to your first question, Tammy, is what is your reason for doing this? What's your purpose? And what do you want the business to do in your life? Is it for lifestyle? Is it for making money? Like, how hard do you want to work? What do you see your role in this? Are you going to be hands-on or just, kind of standing back? So there's so much to figure out before you even go, file for your LLC. That is, kind of that soul searching aspect to figure out first.
An often missed first step in business planning is that piece. Thank you for that, you guys. I appreciate your input. In Idaho, we have the Small Business Development Center, and we have the Department of Commerce, and then we have our local chambers. And most cities and counties have economic development departments that can also guide entrepreneurs in their first steps. If there's
can I just add one thing real quick?
Yeah.
So the Veterans Business Outreach Center is also a great resource. It's actually in the Pacific Northwest. It's with the Business Northwest Impact Group, and they have a special track that's specific for farmers and ranchers, agricultural food, and they actually have a pitch competition that they do every year too as well, and it's online. So they're really stepping up on trying to provide more resources and support in that area. And then the other, I'm going to kind of do a thing that Laurel just did. To your first question that you had asked about, there are some certification programs that are available at technical training centers or schools, or maybe schools that maybe aren't even in the state of Idaho. And if you're not aware of the Idaho Launch Program, that allows for adults to get up to $3,500 to pay for certifications. So that could be something they start with, right? What do I need to know, and what do I need to learn, and which programs are out there that I could use this funding for and apply for? And you can apply for that anytime throughout the year. So there's no windows. And so that's a really great opportunity there to take advantage of. And the Workforce Development Council is very supportive of agricultural entrepreneurs and supporting those businesses just as much as they are with the trades and the tech and the healthcare systems too as well.
Great addition. Thank you, Mindy. Savannah.
So I just wanted to say I dropped in the chat. There are 2 documents for any business owners who are thinking of selling their business or passing it on, for the conversations that you need to be having with your family. And sometimes it helps to have an external document or something to be like, hey, like, this is what we're supposed to be working through. And it's kind of a framework to talk through all that stuff. So, so find those in the chat. They're 2 different PDFs based on whatever your needs might be.
Incredible. Thank you, Savannah. Erica, I see you have a question.
Hi, I'm Erica Sattler, and I'm up here in North Idaho. This has been a great roundtable. Thank you so much for all of the amazing input. I did want to jump in really quickly on the first question that you asked the panel here at the end of this conversation that David answered. And I wanted to say, from the perspective of somebody who moved here from another state, our family and farm were run out of our previous state because we were trying to practice agriculture in city limits. And so we ultimately researched and found the area that we live in now because of their favorable agriculture laws and zoning districts and the protections that we have for farming and ranching. So that issue is really important to me. I really appreciated his perspective, but we've always taken a much less institutionally focused approach when we moved here. It's kind of always been our perspective that we should understand what the market has. And if we do intend to be a successful farm business, not just people who farm, there's a big difference, especially in conventional agriculture today, where it's a multi-generational project that the kids and grandkids are still paying off debt from previous generations. And we entered this situation with no debt and no interest in obtaining debt in order to move our businesses forward. And so we've had to understand what the market wanted, and then understand how to essentially focus on a profit per acre, because we don't have thousands and thousands of acres of land. We have 80 acres of land that we're working with. And so rather than focusing on an institutional perspective and we did try in the beginning to go to the organizations, the university, the NRCS, and those kinds of organizations in order to connect with what the best practices in Idaho were. We just found that they were heavily slanted towards that institutional model that required a lot of either money borrowing or contractual relationships with grant funding and things like that would encumber our ability to make decisions on our own behalf on our farm. So we've managed to persevere by figuring things out along the way, stacking many enterprises and following those kinds of methodologies. And we've built multi-tiered business structures, which are growing. And so I really I wanted to weigh in on that point, but also to thank Savannah and Laurel, because those are the questions we're now facing, which is, okay, now we built this business, what are our kids doing with it? So that's a really big, how do we not screw it up for the future now that we put all of our blood, sweat, and tears into building a thing? So that was really excellent feedback from this panel. Thank you so much. And I look forward to examining your websites and connecting with you for those sort of decision makings as we walk down this pathway. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that input and that good insight. You're right. Dollars matter. Knowing whether you're going to make money does, I mean, if that's part of your reason why, then that does make sense. Absolutely. Thank you guys. If there's no other questions, we can let everyone go. Just one more quick, see if there's any questions. Nothing. Perfect. Love it. You guys have 10 minutes back in your day. Thank you so much, David, Laurel, Savannah, Braden, Mindy. Thank you guys so much for taking the time with us and giving us your incredibly wise words. Thank you guys so much. Take care.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Tammy.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.